Hey, you like cars? Well, welcome back. We're here again, CarQuicks Podcast, and it's episode 46. You know, CarQuicks, season 2 if you ain't know. Sometimes I say it's season 2, sometimes I don't. Just depends on how I'm feeling. Today I'm feeling like I want to say it. And what are we going to talk about? This is, again, I'm going to reiterate this for a couple, maybe another week or so. Talking about this as being like the second episode of the week. So we just kind of talk about a subject matter that was just either on my mind or something that I was reading about. And I've been reading about something very particular, or I've been observing something very particular when it comes to many of the things that I'm seeing inside of the automotive space, inside of the EV space specifically. Okay, we're going to talk about EVs right now. And here's the thing we're talking about. I'm just checking a microphone right now. If you're looking on video, like, why I keep looking down like that? I'm just making sure that my levels are correct. So here's what I've been observing. If you've been looking at anything related to EVs recently, you know that they have been playing fruit ninja on these price tags. Like I said in my last podcast, they are slicing these prices. They're dropping. These things are depreciating like luxury cars, okay? Like the worst level of depreciation. And one of the things that I've been reading is people saying, like, listen, we already saw this coming. Those that don't really like the push of EVs and how manufacturers jumped off a cliff when it came to saying we're not doing nothing else. It's EVs or nothing else. Okay, get on board or get left behind. And now the tide has changed a bit. Things are getting a little interesting. So what do I mean by that? Like, Tesla last year was dropping their price every other weekend. I mean, it was at the point where you were placing bets on, like, what do you think they're going to drop it down to? Another 2,000, another 5,000, 10,000? What do you think they're going to do? And if you bought a Model 3 or a Model S or a Model X or a Model Y, there were many owners that were trying to sue Tesla because the following week they chopped $7,000 off it. So whatever you thought your car was worth. Now, not to say that you should be investing in cars like appreciating assets. This ain't the S&P 500. So if you're buying commodity cars, and I'm going to use that blanket statement of commodity cars to basically entail anything that is under the insanity of like hypercars, like Koenigseggs and Paganis and Ferrari F40s and F50, like the rare, super expensive, elite level of car that trades hands by the millionaires and billionaires of the world, right? Anything under that is going to be considered a commodity car for the sake of this podcast, just so you can understand where I'm kind of getting my thoughts from. And hey, give me feedback. When this is done, leave a comment and say, hey, what do you think about the current EV state? Does it make sense? Are they showing signs of weakening? Is it still strong in some areas? We're going to get to kind of all of that. Maybe not some of it, maybe a little bits and pieces, but I'm just going to kind of speak my mind and, go on a little riff in my head. So you had Tesla last year before, just dropping the price. And they were competing to have the most EVs out there. I've said before, Elon is competing with Chinese company called BYD, who is selling more EVs than Tesla is, and they are trying to become global. There's news of them trying to build a factory in Mexico so they can import their cars into America. And many experts have said it's not an if, it's just when, and it will happen at some point. And if we're already dropping prices now, what do you think the Chinese company's going to do, right? You think they're going to come in here and be exceeding the price, knowing that they have a battle of image and how people feel about Chinese products and Chinese companies in the U.S. market. So it's not going to be something easy. The only way you really can get people to just adopt is to just come in at a price that's so crazy, and maybe the car has so much value and is delivering so high that people just say, hey, guess what? I'm not even going to get involved in a political stance of what I feel. The car is a car, it delivers, it does what it needs to do. I'm buying it. So Tesla's been dropping their price. couple weeks ago, Lucid dropped their price. Lucid Air dropped their price between $8,000 down to $1,000, depending on the model you had. If you had the more base model ones, they dropped it down $8,000. I don't have the exact number because I'm just speaking about what's happening with the pricing. Pricing dropped $8,000. If you get all the way up to like the Lucid Air, the super expensive one, it dropped only by $1,000. But the point is, they themselves are dropping the price. Rivian laid off another 10% of their workers, saying that they have uncertainty on the forecast and the future of 2024. They also dropped their prices on their SUVs and their truck. So it's not just one company after another. It's a consistent amount of companies back to back dropping their prices. Just today, when I'm recording this video and recording this podcast, Ford announced that they're dropping the price on a Mustang Mach-E down up to $8,000, and they're offering 0% APR, which is 0% APR in this economy is wild. Okay, matter of fact, it already dropped up to $8,000, and it has 0% APR. That might be one of the most smoking deals in all of the land. Okay, I'll be perfectly honest. Let me give you an example, and I have it up here for the Mustang Mach-E, so I'll just repeat it. The standard select rear-wheel drive model usually started at $44,795. After today, it's $41,000. The model after that goes to $47,000. That one's now $44,000, $48,000 for the premium, and now it drops to $44,000. That's a $4,100 discount. And then when you get all the way to the GT, that's the one I like. Got to get the GT or the GT Performance. GT Performance, which normally was $58,000 to $61,000 to $66,000. Those now start at $54,000. That's a $7,600 drop, and $59,000, which is a $7,600 drop. And the one that gets the biggest drop are the premium all-wheel drive, premium rear-wheel drive, the California Route 1 all-wheel drive. Those had started around $55,000 to $58,000, and they now are in the $47,000 range to $50,000. That is an $8,100 discount. If you bought a Mustang Mach-E yesterday, I would be coming back immediately. Okay, I'd be like, hand me over my money, and we're gonna do this again. And you get 0% APR. So if you qualified for that, you still come out on top. On top of that, if you lease it, it's even cheaper. And I think it's still even is eligible for the incentives from the EV that you get back from the taxes. And if that is the case, actually, let me just read that real quick, because I believe that is the case. And it is, because you can still get on the cheapest model, the rear-wheel drive model that I spoke about on the first one, that is $41,000. You still can get the $7,500 EV incentive tax that'll bring it down to $34,000. That's nuts. You're talking about $10,000 just like that, right? So if you bought one recently, or if you had one a couple months ago, you now are looking at this like, oh, I'm really out on left field, plus 0% APR, which you're probably paying at the best 4 or 5%. Then you didn't get the discount. Even if you had the EV incentive tax, you still are out a certain amount of money. But like I said before, no one should be buying any car with the idea that they're going to make some money on it or that it will hold any type of real value. There's a few cars, even in the commodity range, that they don't appreciate, but they don't decline or depreciate in this aggressive manner. Right now, we got EVs that look like, they fell off a cliff, okay? Most of the time, if you have like a really good brand like Toyota or Honda, even if you have like a Honda Odyssey or Toyota Sienna like we do, it'll have like a gradual downturn, but it'll still maintain a lot, especially considering if you're using it every day and you put 100,000 miles on a Toyota Sienna, you still get a fairly decent return if you go to sell it by private party. And if you trade into a dealership, you still get something respectable considering that you drove the car all the way. So when you have something like a Toyota Sienna, like I said, they're gradual, right? They're not aggressive. You're not just losing your shirt immediately. But so Mustang did that. Ford did that on the Mustang Mach-E. And there's more though. Like this gets interesting. Genesis the other day announced that they're easing off of the all EV thing. Now, granted, Genesis EVs are really nice, right? The GV 80s and the 60s, the EV models of those are some premium looking SUVs and cars. Like Genesis has been going crazy since inception. So I'm not even knocking what they're building, what they're doing, but what it does say, and maybe some people won't agree with it or others will say that's not necessarily what's going on. What I see is they're looking at the market. If they're looking at Tesla, they're looking at Lucid, they're looking at Ford, they're looking at even Honda backing out of the EV partnership they had with GM on the Prologue, even though that will come out, but they are easing up on what they're doing. They're like, listen, if the market isn't really as stable as it should have been, we're going to ease up and we're going to introduce hybrids, which comes to another point. Toyota was knocked many times for not adapting to EVs. That's what they used to say in the headlines. Toyota is behind the curve. They're not adapting at the speed, which is kind of hilarious because Toyota is a massive brand. So if they're not moving at the speed that maybe some smaller companies or some startups are moving when it comes to EVs, even from a consumer standpoint, in the very beginning, you would hear in the forums many people saying they should have had an EV Sienna by now. There should be an EV this. They're taking their time. They're taking too long, which it's funny because EVs, even when you look at Tesla and where they're at now, it's still in its infancy when you consider that ICE-based vehicles have gotten so good now over 100 years later. So we're still in the very beginning. Not that technology and advancements don't accelerate that curve, but we're still in the very beginning stages of what EVs are, especially considering we haven't made a leap of a revolutionary standard when it comes to like battery technology. Once we do that, this whole game's going to change drastically. But Genesis is switching to a hybrid model, or they're going to introduce EVs, but with hybrids on the side, right? To kind of give people the option of choosing which way they want to go. Another company did something similar. Mini said, we're going to offer an EV Mini, and we're going to also offer an ICE gas-powered, normal Mini as well. And the company said, this is the power of choice. We're going to give the consumer the ability to choose where they want to either rest their head or lay their head, spend their money, what they want to do the most. So they did that, which made perfectly sense because honestly, some of these companies, they need all the bread and butter they can get. You can't just risk losing some of your demographic because you want to blaze a trail somewhere that everybody doesn't necessarily see the light at the end of that tunnel. Dodge is another company. They came out and said, which was still crazy, because Dodge was making so much headlines and so much money off Scat Packs and Hellcats that they decided to just chuck them people to the side and say, guess what we're doing, guys? Only EVs. And here is the sound of an electric EV that's not a V8, but sounds kind of like one, but it's a purring kitten. And they themselves came back, which I haven't seen a full official confirmation, but it's a very strong rumor with a lot of good intel behind it saying that they're going to put the inline twin turbo 6 inside of the next Charger. Even when they introduce the EV, again, the power of the choice, right? Some people are going to go for the EV and say, listen, I want the new technology. I just want to see what it's like. And then others are going to be like, give me the tried and true. I want to go that route. So Genesis is now backing off. They're going the hybrid route. And what I was saying about Toyota is that they themselves were the ones doing that from the onset. And now it's looking like they were right. See, before, if you're being knocked for like, hey, you're not coming around fast enough, you should have been doing X, Y, and Z. They're doing A, B, and C. And now it's looking like they were on the right path because you have plenty of companies now saying we're going to cool off what we're doing and we're going to kind of slow walk this, which was always my argument, right? I'm not against EVs. I like them. There are some few models that get me excited, and I'm going to get to those in a minute. But I always think that when you go so far to the next extreme, it's never a good thing, right? You have to kind of gradually walk this over there. Can't have just, we're doing this one way and then cut off the lights and say, now we're doing it this way, because there's so much at stake. There's so much infrastructure. You got charging. You have people commuting to work, having to figure out how do you do that in the EV? Where do I, get my range from? Do I set up a system in my house? I don't live in a house, I live in an apartment. How do I charge my car here? My apartment complex doesn't have anything. Is there infrastructure out in the open? Does it charge fast enough? How much time do I got to spend doing it? It's a lot of things there that it's not so easy for everyone. The people that can do it are the ones that are going to buy the EVs and blaze the trail and figure out what they do. I, at some point, will have an EV because I do want to, experience the technology involved with it and see how it is to own it. But I also know that trying to get the masses to then shift and turn what they've known for so long, it's not a good plan. Now, some of those other companies that kind of slowed things down was even Chevrolet. The Trailblazer and the Equinox, they had a bunch of sales in the beginning. I remember they showed the concept, and I was like, yo, the Trailblazer looks dope. Though when the price came out, I kind of had the same argument saying, listen, EVs are too expensive right now. Like $60,000, $70,000 for EVs base, starting for like some models is just not really that good. Even the Mustang Mach-E, with this new reduction in price, it's more palatable for what we're doing for the price tag. But when it first came out, they were like 65, 60, 55. I mean, you're isolating a lot of people. Most people want something that is efficient and inexpensive, still quality. I know that's a hard thing to hit, but let's just say 40 and under kind of starting, or at 40, just kind of getting into a nice safe space. So Chevrolet kind of cooled off on their pre-sales on the Equinox and the Trailblazer. Those two EVs are still coming out, but they're tempering their projections, I'll say, right? They're coming back to the drawing board and they're redrawing. They're like, listen, this picture I drew the first time, we got to add a couple things to it, a couple asterisks to the side, just so y'all know things aren't as they should be. But that is not all doom and gloom, right? There are some EVs that are out right now that I think are really nice and I have me interested in. If I was in the market or planning to buy one, I would highly look at these. First one is the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, which I think is pretty awesome. I'm not going to lie. I like hatchbacks. It's a very large hatchback. You might argue it's an SUV, but Hyundai purposely built the Ioniq 5N in line up with their N model cars, like the Elantra N, the Veloster N, as they still make it. Those two cars were performance cars. They're performance cars that had more pedestrian undertones, or like they came from something that wasn't at this level of performance, but they created it like that, like all the hot hatches and sport compacts that we know and love if you're in that market. So the Ioniq 5N, from the reviews I've read, I saw the review that Chris Harris did when he drove it on the track, and even he said the same thing, like, yeah, it's an EV. Yeah, there's fake sounds. I was reading this on the EV website. They said even though it might have fake engine noises and fake shifting, it still is engaging. Like, they still introduce something that is engaging to people that like driving cars. So you're not losing out on something where it's just numb. That is always a knock against trying to make a performance EV. It's like, okay, cool, press the gas, Tesla Plaid, 0 to 60 under 2 seconds. It's like on a party trick. I mean, that up to the point where people like Marquez Brownlee, he was well known liking Tesla, driving him because he's a tech, YouTuber and podcaster. But he went to go buy a Porsche 911 Turbo S because he said once he drove that, he was like, I understand the point. This is engaging at a level that the Plaid couldn't reach, and it can't because we're just not there yet. So the Ioniq 5N is something exciting. The Kia EV9 is another one that's really exciting because, one, it looks dope to me. It's very futuristic, very utilitarian, cut sharp edges, boxy, squareless, and I like boxy. What can I say? Now, I like the EV9. I was at the Houston Auto Show, and I got to play around to see it, and I think it's very impressive considering that Kia puts that at the top of their pile for SUVs regardless of what motor's in it. If it's an electric or a gas engine, the EV9 is the top of the pile. And there's a few reviews and owner videos I've seen on YouTube of people reporting back after 1,000 miles or so saying, listen, this thing is great. They've come from Model Ys. They've come from other EVs saying this thing is delivering and it looks the part. So there are exciting EVs. I'm not saying that you can't have any. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any. What I'm saying is that right now, the future is a little bit confusing, right? Don't buy an EV at this stage in the game looking for anything to appreciate. I know Elon back in the day said my cars will never depreciate. They're just like appreciating assets like the stock. That was a lie. So honestly, if you did believe him saying that and then look at it like a businessman selling a product, then maybe you fell for something that you shouldn't have fell for. But anybody that was reading that through in between the lines realized that there's no way that these things is appreciating assets to that degree. They were for a while because of the demand, but The economy has shifted. There was a change in economies and things are now moving a different direction. So if you're looking for an EV, should you get one right now? I think depending on what it is, like if you're getting a Mustang Mach-E, this might be the best deal that you can ever get. So if you're in the market for that, they dropped it up to 8,000, it's 0% APR. I mean, I don't foresee it going any lower, but listen, crazier things have happened. We've already seen it drop a number of times. If you want a Tesla, the new Model 3 came out, the redesigned one. It looks very sharp, very good. That's at the lowest price it possibly is right now. The used market for Model 3s a year prior is extremely competitive because Hertz got out of the EV rental. They said, we don't even want to deal with this no more because it was more upkeep than they realized, considering that they were thinking, oh, there's no gas engines, electric engine. It's probably going to be much cheaper and easier to maintain, which didn't really pan out the way they thought. So they got rid of their whole fleet. So there's Model 3s on the market now for under, 25,000, like, nothing. And so you could still get a very good deal. And I still think that if you're really in the market and you've done your research, you should still get certain models. Model 3 is still a good one to get. I don't know about a Plaid, because you're so far up in the luxury side of it that you're going to depreciate anyways because you're near $100,000. And that's going to fly off a cliff as soon as you get off the lot. But Kia EV9, I think that'll hold well because Kia brand is holding well. They're doing well. Whatever Genesis makes as an EV, that'll be a good one to go for. Maybe even the Honda Prologue. There are things to get, and I still think that they make very good cars. But it is something to be concerned with. Let me not say concerned. It is something to observe and be aware of. Understanding that I'm probably not going to get the resale I thought I could. Though you shouldn't buy a car to think about reselling unless you're talking about this real special cars. And you shouldn't be mad if it does drop in price because you probably right now are getting the best price. There can always be something later, but if you keep waiting and waiting, you might just keep on waiting until maybe you're done waiting or you just have to buy something now. If it's more of a want, like I would like to go get an EV, I would possibly wait. Wait as long as you can. Now, if you get to the point where your car is falling apart and you're like, listen, I'm done fixing this car. I'm not dealing with gas powered cars. I don't want to change any oil. All I want to deal with is brakes and tires and windshield washer fluid. Then by all means, go get an EV because the price right now is at its best it's ever been. I don't really know what's going to happen next, right? What I do know is that once the infrastructure and things like that come into place, it'll do a lot better. But right now, it is crazy out there. If you're looking at EVs, like I said before, let me reiterate, the prices are getting Ginsu'd, okay? Remember the Ginsu blade commercial? It was just cutting through everything. It was cutting through a shoe, a can, leather. People probably like, what is a Ginsu? If you don't know, listen, I'm old school. I know about it growing up as a kid, the Ginsu blade commercial. So that's what's happening to the price. They're getting sliced. And if you don't want that to happen, well, then don't buy a car. just get a bicycle. Or get an old school BMX. Those are going up in prices because I want to get one. The vintage BMXs, little Schwinn's, GTs. I'm going on a tangent. Anyways, this ain't about BMX bikes, okay? I can go on days about that. But as far as the EVs go, I think the market is shaky, right? It's uncertain. But uncertainty can bring smoking deals. Mustang Mach-E, probably the EV9s, probably doing well for like people that want to get them. And that is probably the best time to buy when people are uncertain because you're probably going to get the best deal. And then when the market catches up, prices are going to go right back up with it. Because trust me, once they start selling more of these and people start, deciding to go for EVs, these prices are going right back up. They're not going to keep them low for a while. Keep them low for now to move sales. Later on when it catches on, we're out of here. And, that's just my thoughts on EVs and the prices that I see. Listen, this may not be all facts. Some of this is feelings, no facts. Okay, just me, how I think about it, right? Somebody might pull out the pamphlet saying, no, I looked at the numbers and according to the JD and Power Associates, it says that EVs have been increasing by 3.9% year over year. I understand. I get it. There's always some hard number to qualify somebody's opinion somewhere, somehow. But the headlines don't lie. The prices are dropping. It's not because sales are so out of this world. It's because the sales are not where they should be. And because of that, they got to make some adjustments. But hey, If you're trying to get one, now's your best bet. If you like the Mustang Mach-E, that's probably the greatest deal ever, and Teslas and things of that nature. But hey, go find out. I'm going to be in the GR Corolla until then and in between then. But you know what I say? Do as you wish and do as you may. It's Cameron Biggs, your host. This was another episode of CarQuicks. I'll see y'all around.